Welcome to another daily encouragement. Here to point you guys to Jesus, and I hope that you're able to point people yourself. We talked last week about New Year's mishaps and things to be aware of regarding ourselves, but now I want to follow up with that and talk about what we can get wrapped up in waiting period. And my question for you is, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you following Jesus? Why aren't you pursuing a relationship with him further? If you've already committed to your life, what are you waiting for to take the next step? And there's a few questions I want to list off that I think are crucial to ask yourself in regarding to answer that. How long do you plan to live for? How much control do you believe that you really have over that? What are you doing with the time that is given to you? And are you ready to meet Jesus in heaven? You see, those are all very deep questions that I think are too important to not ask ourselves. And you look at the different analogies of the spiritual milk and spiritual meat that we consume as Christians. I think that you're not getting to the meat if you don't start asking yourself those questions. They're not easy to answer, and your answers might change over time as you ponder on them. But I look to Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4, and it says this: "One who watches the wind will not sow, and one who looks at the clouds will not harvest." It's pretty self-explanatory. I want to tell you a story about when I used to be a CNA. I worked at a few different medical facilities, the biggest one being Salem Hospital. Part of my experience was working on an oncology unit, which typically dealt with people with cancer-related treatments. Or people with cancer. So it was a very tender environment. You get to care for people usually at the end of their lives and their families. But there were some experiences that I had with patients that were at the end of their lives. They knew they were going to pass away. And it's a very beautiful thing when you witness the mindset altering of someone in that state. And I got to experience that, and I'm thankful for that. Some of them were at peace with dying and completely relaxed. No care in the world. Others were angry, bitter, or even woeful. And there were a few extreme examples, and the best example on the good part of the good spectrum of the extreme was someone who was so content. They had a healthy family dynamic. You could see the families just flooding in with gifts and flowers and cards and sentiments, and they would even take shifts upon themselves. I worked overnight, so they would take shifts as family members to stay overnight with their family. Even if they were sleeping the whole time, they just wanted to be there with them. And they had a community of friends, and oftentimes they had a faith in God that they would express to me. And they reminisced over stories, experiences, and they poured wisdom into me. And sometimes they even asked to pray for me. And that was humbling in the position that I was in, helping them out. And they were praying for my servitude over them. Now, the opposite side of the spectrum, there were some patients that I had that had unhealthy relationships with their friends and families. They burned their bridges, unfortunately. They had bitter attitudes. They were simply regretful. They just weren't content. And they were angry and just filled with rage about their situation. Why me? Why am I dealing with these health concerns? Why are other people seemingly having better lives than I had? Some of them admitted regrets to me. Some of them admitted that they wanted to take more risks, but they hadn't. They did not seek true happiness. They sought the comfortable, least abrasive lifestyle. And oftentimes they were in denial of any sort of belief in God or any other religion for that matter. And it was sad. I had compassion over them because that is not how God intended us to live. That is not a fate that we should feel like is a real possibility. We don't have to have that. We don't have to face that. And I meet these older people and I look at them with the ones that say they look back on their life with regrets. And I think of the parable of the 10 virgins. You got to be the prepared virgins. You got to be the ones with your lamps filled with oil, ready to go when God calls us. And that time of preparation, you're focusing on what is truly important in this life, and that's Jesus. Those that aren't prepared, they've reached the end of their lives and they're angry and regretful. Why? Because they didn't lead a life worthy of the calling. And so my question is, what are you waiting for? Start living all in for Christ. Have nothing holding you back. Don't let culture hold you back. Don't let your own regrets or your self-doubt prevent you from starting over and starting anew again. God's graces are new every morning. Become the disciple you were called to be and bring as many people with you on that journey as you can. That is true discipleship. That is true evangelism. And it's contagious in such a positive way. Don't waste any time and regret what you haven't done before it's too late. Every day is a gift from God, so make the most of it and follow Jesus. Grace and peace be with you, church.